He was known as the man with the biggest heart in Inkster, Michigan, a man who gave to everyone, but lost everything in one tragic night. Anthony Nick Jones was found dead under mysterious circumstances, and nearly a decade later, his family is still searching for answers. Who wanted him gone? And why has no one been held accountable? This is more than just a murder mystery. It's a story of love, loss, and a family's fight for justice. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss a story where we speak for those who can't speak for themselves. The late summer sun hung lazily over the small city of Inkster, Michigan, the kind of Saturday afternoon that should have been peaceful. The date was August 31st, 2019, and 54-year-old Anthony Nick Jones was out driving through one of Inkster's quieter neighborhoods. The clock read around 12:45 p.m. when Nick's red Saturn sedan came to a stop on Lehigh Street, near Princess Avenue. To the outside world, it looked like an ordinary moment, just another man out running errands or scouting the area. But what happened in the next few minutes would change the lives of everyone who knew Nick forever. Nick wasn't a stranger to these streets. He'd been born and raised here, spending most of his life working hard and giving back to the very same community. Friends say he was likely looking for a new house to restore and flip that afternoon, something he often did in his free time. He loved taking something broken and turning it into something beautiful. That was just who he was. But somewhere along that route, fate intersected with danger. According to witnesses, a man approached Nick's vehicle. No one knows exactly what words were exchanged, if any. Then, a single gunshot pierced the stillness of the neighborhood. The echo rippled down the street, followed by the screeching sound of tires as the gunman fled the scene in what was described as a red car. Within minutes, neighbors came rushing out of their homes. One of them called 911, reporting a man slumped over the wheel of a red car, unresponsive. Police and paramedics arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. Anthony Nick Jones was pronounced dead at the scene. The killer was gone. The motive was unclear. The silence that followed was deafening. For residents of Inkster, tragedy was not new, but this one hit differently. Nick wasn't just another name in a police report. He was the man who volunteered at church, the neighbor who lent tools without asking for them back, the smiling face who waved at everyone, even strangers. To those who knew him, the news didn't make sense. Who could possibly want to hurt Nick Jones? The crime scene quickly filled with flashing red and blue lights. Detectives worked under the summer heat, marking shell casings, photographing evidence, and speaking to witnesses. But it didn't take long for the case to hit its first roadblock. There was almost no evidence to go on, no clear motive, no usable surveillance footage, no immediate suspects. And so, as the day faded into evening, Inkster was left with a murder that made no sense. A man killed in broad daylight, for reasons no one could understand. That night, word began to spread across the community. Calls flooded into family members' phones. One after another, relatives tried to process the impossible, that their beloved Nick was gone. His uncle, Larry Spencer, later described getting that phone call as the moment time stopped. His first reaction was disbelief. "Not Nick," he said. "It couldn't be Nick, not him." As investigators began piecing together the timeline, one thing became clear. Nick had no known enemies. No involvement in drugs or crime. No outstanding disputes. He was by all accounts one of the kindest, most selfless men in Inkster, and that's what made his death so chilling. The question was no longer just who did this. It was why him. Days later, police would release a brief statement asking the public for help. Any tip, any lead. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the investigation began to grow cold. Meanwhile, Nick's family was left with nothing but heartbreak and 1,000 unanswered questions. A bright, generous man, gone in an instant. A community in mourning, and a city searching for justice that has yet to come. Before the tragedy that shattered a community, Anthony Nick Jones lived a life that reflected compassion, discipline, and purpose. To understand the weight of his loss, you have to understand the man behind the name. A man who believed in hard work, faith, and giving back. Nick was born and raised in Inkster, Michigan, a small city just outside Detroit. It wasn't always an easy place to grow up. Inkster was known for its struggles, high unemployment, increasing crime, and economic hardship that tested even the strongest spirits. But Nick's family, like many others, found ways to create love and laughter amid the challenges. From a young age, Nick's character stood out. His mother often described him as a helper. Whether it was mowing a neighbor's lawn or carrying groceries for an elder down the street, Nick always seemed to find ways to serve others. That sense of generosity followed him throughout his entire life. After graduating from Robichaud High School in 1983, Nick left Michigan briefly to attend Alabama State University, where he began building a future rooted in ambition and learning. Those who knew him say he carried a quiet confidence, the kind that made people trust him instantly. His time at Alabama State gave him not only education, but exposure to a broader world, fueling his passion for creativity, community, and leadership. When Nick returned home to Inkster, he was determined to make a difference. He started working full-time, but he also carved out time to explore his creative side. Nick found joy behind a camera, capturing life's moments through videography and photography. He began filming weddings, reunions, birthdays, and community events, not as a way to make money, but to preserve memories for families who couldn't afford professional services. He charged less than anyone else, sometimes nothing at all. It wasn't about profit for Nick. It was about people. His uncle, Larry Spencer, would later recall, Nick didn't have to be asked to help. If he saw a need, he filled it. That was his nature. Nick's creativity was balanced by his work ethic. He spent his nights working the midnight shift at Inkster's Chrysler plant, sometimes coming home just as the sun was rising, only to pick up his camera and work on editing projects for others. His family often told him to rest, but Nick would smile and say, "I'll rest when I'm done helping." Even without a family of his own, Nick's home was always open. Nieces, nephews, cousins, everyone knew Uncle Nick's house was a place of warmth. He never married and never had children, but he didn't need to. His love reached everyone around him. Nick was also a man of deep faith. For over 30 years, he served faithfully at the Pentecostal Temple Church of God in Christ, where he volunteered as a youth mentor and driver for elderly members who couldn't make it to Sunday services. He didn't just talk about kindness, he lived it. When the holidays came around, Nick was always among the first to volunteer at community events. He helped with toys for tots drives, collected clothes for families in need, and served meals to the homeless at the Capuchin Soup Kitchen in Detroit. He gave without question, without hesitation, and often without recognition. To everyone who crossed paths with him, Nick was a light. And that's what made his murder so unthinkable. He had no enemies, no feuds, and no history of trouble. The same man who spent his days serving others was gunned down in broad daylight, an act that felt senseless, cruel, and deeply personal to those who loved him. In the weeks following his death, his church community held a vigil in his honor. Candles flickered beneath the soft glow of the evening sky as dozens gathered to share stories about the man they called the Heart of Inkster. Some remembered how he always showed up with a camera and a smile. Others recalled how he slipped $20 into the hands of struggling parents after service, telling them to buy something for their kids. The stories all shared one theme: selflessness. Nick lived his life for others, and in the cruelest irony, his life was taken before anyone had the chance to return that same kindness to him. Saturday, August 31st, 2019, began like any other late summer day in Inkster, Michigan, the kind of day where the sun sits high and the air feels still. But by the end of it, one of the city's kindest souls would be gone, and a quiet community would be left asking a single haunting question: why Nick? Around 12:45 p.m., Anthony Nick Jones was driving through Lehigh Street near Princess Avenue, one of Inkster's more developed neighborhoods. The area was known locally as the upscale part of town: well-kept lawns, quiet blocks, and families who'd lived there for generations. Nick, a man who loved restoring homes, was likely scouting the area for a new renovation project. He'd flipped a few homes before. Breathing life back into forgotten houses was one of his passions. He had an eye for potential, and in every broken space he saw beauty waiting to be rebuilt. But that afternoon, his plans were interrupted by a figure who would change everything. Neighbors later told police they heard what sounded like an argument, followed by gunshots, sharp, echoing, and sudden. A woman walking her dog said she saw a man approach Nick's red Saturn sedan, then run off moments later toward another red vehicle parked nearby. By the time officers arrived, Nick was already gone. 2 gunshot wounds. No witnesses who could identify the shooter. No clear motive. No trace of a robbery. His car was still running, doors locked, cash still in his wallet. It wasn't random, it couldn't be. The Inkster Police Department responded within minutes, sealing off the area. The bright Michigan sun reflected off police tape. Flashing lights bounced off nearby houses, and within an hour, news spread across town. Someone shot Nick. Family and friends rushed to the scene, disbelief washing over them. Larry Spencer, Nick's uncle, recalled getting the call, the kind of call no one ever forgets. "I thought they had the wrong person," Larry said. Nick never got into trouble. He was the one helping everybody else. Investigators canvassed the area, searching for surveillance footage, tire tracks, anything that could lead to a suspect. But leads were scarce. Cameras from nearby homes offered no clear angle. The gunman's vehicle, described only as a red car, was too common to trace. For a man so deeply connected to his community, Nick's death felt like a betrayal, as though the very streets he'd spent a lifetime serving had turned on him. That evening, local news outlets aired the story. Reporters stood near the taped-off intersection, microphones trembling slightly in the wind. Behind them, the red Saturn sat silent, the final resting place of a man whose life had been devoted to peace. Police promised justice. They interviewed witnesses, checked Nick's phone records, and reviewed hours of security footage from nearby businesses. But every trail went cold. No fingerprints, no weapon, no suspect. In the days that followed, Inkster mourned. The church that Nick attended held an impromptu prayer service, the sanctuary packed with people who couldn't hold back their tears. Pastor David Murray told the crowd, "We lost one of God's servants, a man who loved this community more than himself." Candles lined the church steps, photographs of Nick illuminated by flickering flames. Children from the youth group he mentored stood side by side, clutching posters that read, "Justice for Nick." But behind the prayers and public tributes, his family was drowning in grief. His mother inconsolable, his cousins angry, his uncle determined. This wasn't some street dispute, Larry told reporters. Nick didn't deserve this. We want answers. The Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office confirmed what police already knew. Nick had died instantly. There were no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds. Whoever killed him acted fast, precise, and without hesitation. And that precision terrified everyone who loved him, because it meant this wasn't just violence, it was targeted. Was it jealousy? A misunderstanding? A mistaken identity? Or something darker? A secret motive buried beneath the surface of Inkster's crime-ridden streets? For investigators, the lack of answers only deepened the mystery. For Nick's family, the silence was unbearable. As days turned into weeks, the shock began to fade, replaced by a deep, burning need for justice. Larry Spencer, determined not to let Nick become another unsolved statistic, started reaching out to media outlets and Crime Stoppers. He told anyone who would listen, "Somebody knows something. They just need the courage to come forward." But courage, like truth, can be hard to find in a town living in fear. In the weeks following Anthony Nick Jones's death, the shock that gripped the city of Inkster, Michigan, began to settle into something heavier, frustration. Grief had turned to anger, and anger into determination. For Nick's family, especially his uncle Larry Spencer, the silence from investigators was unbearable. Police had canvassed the neighborhood, interviewed residents, and examined evidence, but each lead ended in the same place, nowhere. The Inkster Police Department announced they had a person of interest, but within days the individual was released without charges. "Everybody says what you want to hear," Larry told reporters, his voice weary but sharp. "But you never get to see what you're looking for, some kind of justice." Nick's family refused to let his name fade into another unsolved case file. Larry became an unofficial investigator himself, calling the department weekly, following up on tips, and even reaching out to Crime Stoppers in hopes of stirring attention. Each time the phone rang, he prayed it was a breakthrough, but it never was. Meanwhile, the community that Nick had poured his life into gathered to honor him. His church, Pentecostal Temple Church of God in Christ, held a memorial service that drew hundreds. Friends spoke about his laughter, his faith, and the countless ways he had touched lives. "He gave so much to others," said one church member. "He didn't deserve this." As months passed, Larry's living room became a makeshift war room. Walls covered with timelines, news clippings, and handwritten notes. He tracked every possible lead, mapping where Nick was last seen, where witnesses stood, and what the shooter's escape route might have been. But despite all his effort, the official investigation remained at a standstill. Detectives hinted at potential motives but never offered proof. There were whispers that it could have been a robbery gone wrong, though nothing was stolen. Others speculated it was a targeted act, but no one could explain why anyone would want Nick dead. Larry didn't buy the robbery theory. Nick didn't have enemies, he said. He wasn't mixed up in anything. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. The family's frustration deepened as the Inkster Police Department went silent. Phone calls went unanswered. Promised updates never came. For Nick's loved ones, it felt like time was moving forward. But justice was standing still. Still, they refused to give up. Larry began using social media as a tool for awareness, posting photos and memories of Nick, urging anyone with information to come forward. He wanted to keep the case alive in the public's memory, to remind people that behind every unsolved murder was a family still waiting for answers. Nick's cousin, Barbara P.T. Cooper, joined him in this mission. "He was extraordinary," she said in an interview. "I still pray for the man who did this to him because that's what Nick would have done." Her words reflected the deep forgiveness that Nick himself had always lived by. Even in tragedy, his family tried to hold on to his compassion, but forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. Each year on the anniversary of his death, they gathered at the spot where Nick was killed, a simple stretch of road now marked by flowers, candles, and framed photographs. They prayed for peace, they prayed for strength, and above all, they prayed for truth. Larry also began advocating for broader awareness about cold cases in Wayne County, reaching out to organizations like Project Cold Case and local media outlets. He believed that keeping Nick's story visible was the only way to ensure it wouldn't be buried under the weight of newer crimes. "It's not in me to quit," Larry said firmly. "I won't give up until I have answers." Through his determination, Nick's case began to resurface online, gaining new attention from cold case networks and local journalists. Yet as each year passed, the frustration of uncertainty remained. Inkster moved on, but the Jones family couldn't. For them, August 31st wasn't just a date. It was a wound that never healed, and in that wound lived a question that haunted them every single day. Who killed Anthony Nick Jones, and why? Even years after his death, Anthony Nick Jones continues to leave a powerful mark on the community he loved so deeply. His friends and family often say that Nick's story didn't end with the gunfire that took his life. It lived on in the voices demanding justice, and in the hearts of the people he helped during his 45 years on Earth. Before tragedy struck, Nick was known as the kind of man who made every person feel seen. Whether it was volunteering at church, mentoring kids who struggled in school, or offering a ride to someone stranded in the Michigan cold, Nick always showed up. He didn't have much, but what he did have, he shared. Those who knew him best remember his laugh first. He had that kind of laugh that filled the room, one friend recalled. You couldn't stay sad around Nick. He'd find a way to pull you back into the light. That energy, that warmth, is what people miss most. After his death, his family channeled their grief into purpose. Larry Spencer, Nick's uncle, and the man who refused to let his case be forgotten, founded a small local initiative called Voices for Nick. It started as a single Facebook page, meant to share memories and updates about the case, but soon, it became a space for others who had lost loved ones to unsolved violence. People from Inkster and nearby Detroit began to post photos, share stories, and offer prayers. Over time, it evolved into a small movement, a reminder that behind every cold case was a real person, not just a name in a file. Nick's story opened our eyes, one supporter wrote. He made us realize how many families are still waiting for answers. Nick's church also played a key role in keeping his legacy alive. Each year, on the anniversary of his passing, Pentecostal Temple Church holds a memorial service in his honor. The front pews are filled with candles and framed pictures, a testament to the light he left behind. Pastors speak not only about Nick's faith, but about the urgency of standing against community violence. For the Jones family, those memorials are bittersweet. They bring comfort but also reopen old wounds. Larry admits there are nights he still dreams about Nick, sometimes hearing his voice, sometimes reliving that phone call from the police. But when he wakes, the pain transforms into fuel. When I talk about Nick, he says, I'm keeping him alive. In recent years, local journalists and true crime advocates have picked up the case again, spotlighting the unanswered questions that still surround it. There's hope that renewed attention, along with advancements in forensic technology, could finally bring closure. The family remains cautiously optimistic, holding on to their faith as tightly as ever. Nick's legacy is also one of forgiveness. His cousin Barbara said it best, "We don't live in anger. We live in hope, because that's what Nick would have wanted." Those words reflect a powerful truth, and that even in death, Nick's spirit continues to teach lessons of compassion and resilience. Through all the pain, one thing has become clear. Anthony Nick Jones was more than a victim. He was a pillar, a mentor, a believer. His story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, love can become a form of resistance. And though justice has yet to come, Nick's family refuses to let his name fade. His story has become a symbol, not just of tragedy, but of endurance, faith, and the unbreakable bond of family. Because somewhere out there, someone still knows the truth. And until that truth is spoken, the Jones family's fight will continue. In Nick's name, for Nick's justice. Anthony Nick Jones was more than a victim. He was a son, a cousin, a friend, and a man who gave his heart to his community. His family still waits for justice, and they're not giving up hope. If you believe Nick's story deserves answers, share this video. Let his name be heard beyond Inkster. Leave a comment with justice for Nick, like this video, and subscribe to Real Crime Pulse, where we keep real stories alive until justice is served.